Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karunya Ganaganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karunya Ganaganatam Praptasya Kalyana Guranavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Praptasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Ramanchakam Pasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Romanchakam Pasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Dhiramarjanadu Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Juktasya Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Kridvaiva Trupti Vajato Sadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Kridvaiva Trupti Shiradikama Bhavayaraparam Madhura Leela Gunarupanamna Shiradika Bhavayaraparam Madhura Leela Pratikshana Danalalopasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Danalalopasya Nikunja Yuna Ratikali Siddhai Yayali Biri Yukti अपेक्षणीय कुंज राति केले सीधाई तात्रतिदाच अतिबलवस्य वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं तात्रतिदाच साक्षाद्धरित्वेन समस्तश्री रुक्तास्तथाव गतैव सावि सख्या प्रभोज प्रिया एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसाद यश प्रसादं नागति कुतपि यश प्रसादं भगवत्प्रसादं यश प्रसादं नागति कुतपि ध्यायां स्तुवं तस्य यशत्रिसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमः नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाचतारे सतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसरि गौर भक्तवृंद श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य नित्यानंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Shri Chaitanya Nityananda, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Chaitanya Shri Advaita Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Hare Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Vataraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnu Para Paramahansa Prabhu Jagacharya, Astuttara Saraswati Shimari Divine Grace, Abhacharvina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Pratishta Vividi Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Siromani Patit Pavan Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patit Udhari ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ji ki jai. Ananta Kuri Vaishnav Vrindi ki jai. Prem se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. De Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. Prima Nama Sankirtane ka Janaka Prima Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gurunga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Mavranavatar Guru Hari ki jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Juga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Brihadanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopakupina Radha Kun Samakun Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Shri Brajavim Vrindavan Mathur Dham ki jai. Telo Shri Shira Nilamadhava ki jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Eka Chakra Dham ki jai. Param Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Dev Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan ki jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrini Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Mathuradharani ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glory to the assembled bodies. All glory to the assembled bodies. All glory to the assembled bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya Praladaladaine Praladaladaine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha शिलाटंका न खाए शिलाटंका इतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह
इतो नृसिंह परतो नृसिंह
इतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह
इतो नृसिंह परतो नृसिंह
येतो यामृततो नरसिंह
जत जत जामिततो नृसिंह
बहि नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह
बाह्ये नृसिंह हृदये नृसिंह
बहि नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह
नृसिंह हृदये नृसिंह
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे
तव करकमलवरे नाकामद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवद्रीता नरारिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव
करकमलवरे नाकामद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु
केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा
जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश
केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश
जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंह देव जयो नरसिंह देव जयो नरसिंह देव जयो नरसिंह देव
जय नृसिंह देव नृसिंह देव नृसिंह देव जय नृसिंह
जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज
जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव गुरुदेव
जय गुरुदेव
जय श्री भक्त परसव विघ्नाशना कनिष्ठ देव भगवान की जय। भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। गौरी प्रमानंद हरि बोल। श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी सतवत्तये नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी सतवत्तये नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी सतवत्तये नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
Singing, right?
Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Heya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Heya Vilasi
Jaitomara Sharanaloy Tara Vancha Purnahoy
Jaitomara Sharanaloy Tara Vancha Purnahoy
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavana Vasi
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavana Vasi
Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunjayova
Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunjayava
Nayane Bosada Jugala Ruparasi
Aminayane Hari Bosada Jugala Ruparasi
Eini Vedana Taro Sakir Anugata Koro
Eni Vedana Dara Sakirayanu Gata Koro
Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi
Sevayadi Karadi Karani Jadasi
Krishna Krishna dase koi e enamora hoy.
Krishna Krishna das ko enamora.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada yenavasi.
Radha Govinda preme sada yenavasi.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada yenavasi.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada yenavasi.
Nikani cha papani Brahma Tyatikani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade
Kani kani sa papani Brahmayata dikani sa Tane tane prana santi Pradakshina pade pade
Yani kani chapapani Brahma Tyatikani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade
Tane kane sa papani Brahma tane kane sa Tane tane prana santi Pradakshina pade pade
Yani kani chapapani Brahma Tyatikani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade
Tane sa papani Brahma tane kane sa Tane tane prana santi Pradakshina pade pade
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo.
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Vrindaye Tulasi Devaye Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindaye Vrindaye Tulasi Devaye Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindaye Tulasi Devaye Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Sri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your unmet servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shishi, Radha, and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kistakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanam Mahajanam Bhava Maha Glory to Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditioned life, repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There's not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharajananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Shri Shikshastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided, and they are as follows. 1, to blaspheme devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2, to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4, blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuance of Vedic version. 5, to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6, to give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7, to commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8, to consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9, to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10, to not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be in intent while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prem. Now let us offer respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and therefore the compassion for the fallen conditions. So, Ananta Kuti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Mojanchija Suraya Ejuvarimrida Jata Vinimayo Yatra Trisagomrisya Damna Swena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyang Param Dimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes. of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water, only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him because he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaichavocha paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavam atravastu shivadam tapa trayon mulanam Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim va purir ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudite Tra Kritibihi Sususabishtakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukumukad amrita dravya samyatam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur ahorasika bhuvibhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantaksto hi abhadrani Vidunoti Suhitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nasta prayesu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamu bhava Kamalubhadayaschaye Cheta etar anavidam Stitvam sattve prasidhati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso Bhagavat bhakti yogataha Bhagavat tattva vijnanam Mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis Chidyante sarva samsaya Siyante chasya karamani Justa evat manishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality, Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna from the devotees and in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, text number 45. Dadarya dharma pavili yete nrinam varnashramachara yutas trayimayaha tato rita kama binivesitatmanam sunam kapinam iva varna sankaraha. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. At that time, the people in general will fall systematically from the path of a progressive civilization in respect to the qualitative engagements of the castes and the orders of society and the Vedic injunctions. Thus, they will be more attracted to economic development for sense gratification, and as a result, there will be an unwanted population on the level of dogs and monkeys. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It is foretold herein that in the absence of a monarchical regime, the general mass of people will be an unwanted population like dogs and monkeys. As the monkeys are too sexually inclined and dogs are shameless in sexual intercourse, the general mass of population born of illegitimate connection will systematically go astray from the Vedic way of good manners and qualitative engagements in the castes and orders of life. The Vedic way of life is the progressive march of the civilization of Aryans. The Aryans are progressive in Vedic civilization, and the Vedic civilization's destination is to go back to Godhead, back home, where there is no birth, no death, no old age, and no disease. The Vedas direct everyone not to remain in the darkness of the material world, but to go towards the light of the spiritual kingdom far beyond the material sky. The qualitative caste system and the orders of life are scientifically planned by the Lord and His representatives, the great rishis. The perfect way of life gives all sorts of instruction in things both material and spiritual. The Vedic way of life does not allow any man to be like the monkeys and dogs, a degraded civilization of sense gratification and economic development is the byproduct of a godless or kingless government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The people should not, therefore, begrudge the poor administrations they themselves elect. Haribol, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So here's a more serious indictment by Srila Prabhupada of the modern so-called non-culture. Culture means progressive life of knowledge and practice of devotional service, leading to one going back to Godhead. A regressive society is one in which people become addicted to sense gratification, thinking that is the goal of life, and to have sustained so-called sense gratification, they need economic development. Therefore, they go to schools and universities, get degrees, and work the rest of their life like Sudras for some corporation, or they start their own business to exploit people. The corporations exploit people also. So the whole material life is one of exploitation and anxiety. And only a person who decides that, wait a minute, this is not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is completely different than this. Everyone is destined to have suffering and sense gratification based on their previous karma. So you don't have to endeavor for those things. They're going to happen automatically. Therefore, one should use all their energy, intelligence, and all the assets they have in terms of highly evolved senses, and then including the mind, and then this intelligence, to understand their relationship with God. There's no other scripture in the world like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam that gives so much detailed information of what is the material creation, who are the living entities, and what is their real position in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what is the purpose of life for people who are entrapped in the material world. There's no other scripture in the world that gives more detailed information about this most important subject. They give sketchy and incomplete explanations of who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what is the real position of living entities in this world, what is the material nature, and how should the living entity relate to the material nature or use it in order to attain ultimate salvation from the process of birth and death. When I say sketchy, it means that there is some information about these subjects, but it's not complete. How do we know it's not complete? Because people deviate. I say people who are religious deviate to certain degrees from pure devotional service to God or Krishna. So, those deviations are in Hinduism, they're in Christianity, they're in Islam, they're in Buddhism, in Jainism, in Sikhism, and there's unending number of deviations in all these mundane religions. Now, why do we say they're mundane religions? Because they begin at a certain time and they will end at a certain time. What is not mundane religion is called Sanatan Dharma or Varnashram Dharma, because it's ordained directly by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita and explained more deeply and more elaborately in Srimad Bhagavatam. And even more information is given in the Nectar of Devotion and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, the other day we asked the question, is there a devil in Krishna consciousness? there's definitely a devil in the Abrahamic religions, right? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Is there a devil in Krishna consciousness? And the answer was no. There's no devil. But if there is a devil, it's misinformation and it's ignorance. That's what the devil is. Just like if you go to school, the devil is in school, in modern schools. It teaches us misinformation. It teaches us that the goal of life is sense gratification, and to have sustained sense gratification, you need economic development, and to have economic development, it's best to get degrees, higher degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, and so forth, because then you'll get better jobs and you'll have more sense gratification. So even devotees get confused by this, you know. If like when Prabhupada was in India, he was not having so much success convincing people to become Krishna conscious. He asked many fathers and mothers of families who had several sons. He said, "Give me one son, I'll make him a devotee." Nobody gave a son to Prabhupada. Whereas traditionally, even in the West, it was normal that if in a family in which there were like 2 or 3 sons, one son would become a priest, one son would become a politician, and one son would become a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that. It was traditional in France, in Europe, and in India. Actually, it was more structured in India. The sons of Brahmanas became priests normally, and so forth. So Prabhupada was begging people, give me one of your sons. You have so many sons. Give me one of them. I'll make him a devotee. Nobody gave a son. So, and even today, if we ask a devotee family and we say, well, you have 2 sons. Why don't you let one son become a brahmachari and eventually if he's qualified, a sannyasi? No one would give their son. I don't. Would you give one of your sons to do that? You would? That's only because I said this now. Yeah, not earlier, exactly, right. No, it'd be a big no. He said, no, I want my son to go to university. I want to get a good IT job in the future like me, and be able to buy a house and a car and all these things. Yeah. Why should he become a brahmachari? You know, he won't be able to do any of these things. Yeah. So we see the dilemma today of the preponderant or preponderous influence of material education on people. And what is the goal of material education? Everyone should become a Sudra, a worker, either with a PhD or with no education. Doesn't matter. They should all be workers. They should all be begging for a job from some corporation, or they should be a little clever and start their own corporation and exploit other people. You know, everything is based on exploitation in the modern world, because the modern world is based on some kind of ism. It could be socialism, it could be capitalism, it could be anarchism. It's all about one person exploiting another person. So here it says, it is foretold herein that in the absence of a monarchical regime, the general mass of people will be an unwanted population like dogs and hogs. So as soon as you say monarchy, people say, oh my God, are you crazy? We got rid of monarchy. We want democracy. But what did Prabhupada say yesterday? He said, the sage rightly takes the responsibility of the brahmanas as a community for killing monarchical government, and thus giving an opportunity to the so-called democrats, who are generally plunderers of the wealth of the state subjects. the so-called Democrats capture the administrative machine without assuming responsibility for the prosperous condition of the citizens. Everyone captures the post for personal gratification, and thus instead of one king, a number of irresponsible kings grow up to tax the citizens. It is foretold herein that in the absence of good monarchical government, everyone will be the cause of disturbance for others by plundering riches, animals, women, etc. So, of course, when it says Democrats here, Prabhupada refers to it twice. It doesn't mean the Democratic Party today. It means the Democrats, the Republicans, the Socialists, all of them, because they believe in some kind of democratic process for electing low-class people, elected by low-class people, to become plunderers, rogues, and thieves, legal thieves. Right? They can pass laws and legally rip off people's wealth and mislead them by controlling the educational system. So, you see how it's going to be difficult to convince people to go back to a monarchical system in which there's a saintly king. Everyone would say, look, we got rid of that. The United States revolted against the King of England and set up a government. I explained the government of the United States several times previously. Set up a government in which there's checks and balances so that no one can become a king. Yeah, everyone can become low class. So, the monarchical system degraded in the age of Kali, starting by Shringi. And Kali entered into the mind of Shringi and made him puffed up, thinking that he was greater than Maharaj Parikshit, who insulted his father, and that he could be the judge and jury and the executioner and kill Maharaj Parikshit. So we see the lack of proper Krishna conscious education leads to all kinds of strange situations in which people suffer. Now, what is proper Krishna conscious education? It's based on, in the 15th chapter it says that of course the 13th chapter, 8th to 9th verse explains the 20 points of real education, and anything besides those 20 points is ignorance. And the 15th chapter goes even further. It explains more in detail, beginning with what is the false ego, and then it goes to explaining what is the material nature, the Mahatattva, and what is the constitution of the material body. It's made of material and spiritual energy. The material and spiritual energy look like they're mixed together, but actually they are independent of each other. But the spiritual energy, or the spirit soul, the jiva, is covered by the material body made up of the 24 material elements. And also, Krishna is present as the super soul. So now we see, to understand a person, a two-legged person, or a four-legged person, or a 1,000-legged person, you'd have to understand the material elements, 24 material elements, the soul, and the super soul. And further than that, you'd have to understand that the super soul, the soul, and the entire material elements in creation comes from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is real education. And then on top of all that, you would have to understand that the relationship between the jiva and the material nature with Krishna is one of devotional service. So the whole Bhagavad Gita is leading to devotional service by surrender to the Lord and taking dictation from the Lord and following the dictation without any personal motive other than to please the Lord. So this is a big subject, this Bhagavad Gita. And And we have to be convinced that this is real education, not this other nonsense that teaches us to become a Sudra, always dependent on low-class people like CEOs and team leaders and etc. And the whole purpose is sense gratification through economic and sustained by economic development. It's not economic development. In fact, there's a wonderful purport where Prabhupada explains that in the Bhagavatam. It's actually exploitation. Every business is exploiting the customers, the workers, and then the state is exploiting the businesses in the form of constantly increasing taxes and so forth. So there's this, it's not trickle-down democracy, it's trickle-down exploitation from the top to the bottom. And when a person realizes this is the real nature of material life, they feel, why should I be an exploiter and why should I be exploited? So there begins the quest for complete dependency on Krishna, which leads to complete independence from the laws of material nature and from all exploiters. So this is a big subject. Very few people really understand this subject, even amongst devotees. Therefore, it's very important that we regularly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and discuss it and try and churn this ocean of transcendental knowledge to make it pertinent to our lives. Otherwise, we can make it like a light switch. For custom and habit and to look good, you switch it on. But when you want sense gratification, immediately you switch it off. So we should not use Krishna consciousness like that. Krishna consciousness should be always our number one priority in life. We have to prioritize our life. What is number one in our life? Well, usually amongst the nonsense people, they say, number one, it's me. I'm number one. And everybody else is number 2, 3, 4 ad infinitum. But actually, in Krishna consciousness, number one is Prabhupada and Krishna. Because those are the persons who should dictate to us what we should do. Dictate means they tell us with love and affection what is our real duty in life. So this is clearly said here. The Vedic way of life is the progressive march of the civilization, that means the entire human civilization, of the Aryans. The Aryans are civilization of people and government based on helping everyone go back to Godhead. It's not the Nazi definition of Aryan, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, tall guys, originally from the Huns, who settled somewhere in the Germanic countries, and they are the super race, the Übermensch, as Nietzsche called them. It's a bunch of nonsense. They took this term Aryan from the Vedic literature, but they took it without getting it from a spiritual master. They took it with their own speculation and made this false definition of Aryan. So whenever and it's pronounced Aryan, and even today, people talk about the Aryan race of people, the white people, and then everybody else who's brown or black or yellow. They're not part of that superior race. It's a bunch of nonsense. But this is what's going on in society, all due to what? Ignorance and misinterpretation. So that's the devil. Ignorance and misinterpretation. And so, therefore it says, the Vedic civilization's destination is to go back to Godhead, back home, where there is no birth, no death, no old age, and no disease. The Vedas direct everyone not to remain in the darkness of the material world, but to go towards the light of the spiritual kingdom far beyond the material sky. Tamasima Jyotirgama. That's a Vedic aphorism. Go from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge. Or as Krishna says, Evam Vibhanakampartam Agyanamam Tama. So it says that I, dwelling in the heart of all living entities, light up with the lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So that lamp of knowledge is Bhagavad Gita. It's the knowledge that Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita, as we just summarized. There's 4 levels: understanding material nature, understanding individual soul, understanding relationship of the individual soul with the super soul, and understanding that all these things are coming from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so therefore it says, the qualitative caste system and the orders of life are scientifically planned by the Lord and his representatives, the great rishis. The perfect way of life gives all sorts of instruction in things both material and spiritual. So if you really want to learn material knowledge, you have to study Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. If you really want to understand spiritual knowledge, you have to study the same 2 books. All knowledge is given in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That we should be sure of. It's not, if you read Bhagavatam, it's not that you're going to be ignorant in the material society. You'll be smarter than everyone else, because everyone else doesn't understand how they're being exploited. They're just going along like lemmings. Lemmings is animals, something like goats. And if one lemming jumps over a cliff and dies, all the other lemmings follow. So material life is compared to the life of a lemming. All the time, the exploiters, they come up with a new emergency. Oh, the world's going to end in year 2000, Y2K, you know. Oh, the world's going to end in 2012 according to the Mayan calendar. Oh, the world's going to end because of COVID-19. Well, wait a minute. There's COVID-24 coming up soon. And then there'll be COVID-36 and COVID-84. So creating anxiety, that's the material world. But the devotee is prasanatma, self-satisfied. He doesn't need anything extraneous for his happiness, because his happiness or her happiness is within. They realize that Krishna is in the heart, and that in their heart also is their jiva, soul, the source of the consciousness. Therefore, they don't have to look outside. They have to learn to look inside to understand the truth and to become fully happy and satisfied, and to live a decent, honorable life, and same time cultivate Krishna consciousness. A decent, honorable life means you work honestly, you control and limit your material development in order to have time for spiritual development. But most people, they spend all their time in material development, and they just pay lip service to spiritual development, and basically they die confused, and they don't know what's going to happen, and their last prayer is, please God, if there is a God, let there be nothing after I die. What kind of prayer is that? Let there be nothing after. In other words, they want nothing after they die so that they're not held responsible for all the nonsense they did while they were living. But I'm sorry to say there is something after death. There's a judgment, and there's the possibility of taking birth again and again, going through the whole suffering. And there's no guarantee that we'll get a material body in the next life. It depends on what we've done in this life. So the more we have material education, the more it's guaranteed that we won't get a human body in the next life. We'll get the body of an insect or a worm or a rat or a microbe, and be stuck again in the process of material evolution back to the human form of life to get another chance for self-realization. So, parallel to this, it says the Vedic way of life does not allow any man to be like the monkeys and dogs. A degraded civilization of sense gratification and economic development is the byproduct of a godless or kingless government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people should not, therefore, begrudge the poor administrations that they themselves elect. Haribol. So we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Yes.
Thank you for a nice explanation. So, what does it mean spiritual pleasure?
What?
What does it mean to experience spiritual pleasure, happiness?
That's a great question. Well, this is why we have Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. The spiritual, transcendental experience is not at all comparable in any way with material pleasure. The transcendental ecstasy is different. The first major difference is transcendental ecstasy is eternal. It's not temporary. So that right there is enough that should convince anybody. Nasato vidite bhavo, na bhavo vidite sata. So those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the impermanent, there's no duration. And of the permanent, there's no cessation. So, therefore, they choose to always be concerned with sat and not be overwhelmed by asat. So, they can make a choice. They can say, well, I could live in Medina neighborhood and associate with all the rich people. Or I could live in downtown Seattle and associate with all the low-class sense gratifiers. So either you locate with the high-class sense gratifiers, or you associate with the low-class sense gratifiers. You become a sense gratifier by choosing to associate with sense gratifiers. Or I could live in Sammamish and take the advantage of coming every day to the temple and seeing the Mangala Aarti, and worshiping Tulsi Devi, and hearing class and chanting my rounds and associating with devotees and having some prasadam. Or I can oversleep in Medina or somewhere else and not go to Mangala Aarti, not chant any rounds, and eat garbage and rush to work and talk all day long about sports and stock market and how the conditions here are not so good, and maybe I'll change the company I'm working for, etc. So these are the choices that we have to make. Either we choose consciously to stay on the progressive path to Krishna consciousness, or we choose consciously to stay in the mire of sense gratification and money and stock market and this thing and that thing. So there's a big difference.
Now, how to reach that platform of spiritual pleasure for a conditioned soul who's been accustomed with the sensual pleasure in this material world, and to reach that platform of spiritual pleasure also is not overnight. So it could take a long time. So it's hard for a conditioned soul to to persevere, to reach that platform. So what the arrangement Krishna makes for a living entity to...
Krishna arranged you to go out and chant Hare Krishna. And people come and start dancing and smiling and chanting and saying, well, I like this. I like dancing, I like singing, and I like feasting. So instead of feasting on a turkey and dancing the boogie and singing nonsense songs, I can chant Hare Krishna, I can dance the Prabhupada two-step, and I can have prasadam. So, therefore, everything should be first class in Krishna consciousness. So right away, they experience first class dancing, first class singing, and first class prasadam. Then they'll say, hey, I'm not losing anything by joining Krishna consciousness. I'm gaining more dancing, more singing, more prasadam, more happiness. So we have to be expert enough to make that available to the general public. That first class singing, dancing, and prasadam, and first class discussions of what is the actual purpose of life. We have to make everything first class.
What about jaundice disease condition? Jaundice disease condition.
Well,
For living entity, I mean, it is spiritual. All those things you say might be there, available, but it's for a conditioned soul. The Prabhupada gives the example: if you put a amount of stool and a halava for the pig, he goes for the stool instead of going to halava. So there's
yeah, because the pig, his consciousness is limited by his body. You see, just like the worm's consciousness is limited by its body. Now, the human consciousness is also limited. So some people have a big nose, some people have a curved nose, some people have a crooked nose, some people have a nose that's twisted to the left or twisted to the right, right? And all those things determine how they perceive smell. And then there's eyes that could be crooked, right? And then there's legs that could be crooked, and all these things. So everybody in this world who has a material body is limited some way or other by the body. However, and they have a certain type of consciousness. However, it's only in the human form of life that one can, regardless of what kind of body they have, it could be a nice body, it could be a bad body, whatever, their consciousness can become purified. The dog's consciousness, the worm's consciousness, very difficult to purify them. They have to go get to the human form of life to be able to change that limited consciousness. But the human being, regardless of what kind of human body they have, it can be a good body or a bad body, the consciousness can be purified. And that's through association with devotees. So that's the difference.
What they advise, because like I said, the example of a jaundice affected person, he doesn't taste the sweetness. So for materially addicted, conditioned souls, who is addicted to sense gross sense pleasure, he can't taste spiritual reality like that. So it's like if somebody affected by jaundice, he doesn't take sweetness.
But Prabhupada says the solution for jaundice is sugar candy. So sugar candy in the form of halava can cure people from that jaundice. See? Or sugar candy in the form of ISKCON bullet. Right? It's simply wonderful. So we have to become experts in sweetness. Giving people sweetness of Krishna conscious pastimes of the Lord, Krishna conscious food, Krishna conscious, prasadam, and Krishna conscious dancing and singing. See, that's the only thing that can convince people are these things. It's everything else. Simply philosophy is very difficult to convince people with philosophy. Because they're not philosophical. They're philosophical, but not philosophical. So it's very difficult. They've been programmed to be stupid by their education. You see, but everyone is seeking happiness. So if we show them the highest form of happiness, they'll say, hey, this is something I'm interested in because I want to be happy. I want to have some love in my life, and I want to have some peace. So peace, happiness, and love. We should be experts in how to deliver this peace, happiness, and love to the common people. So we have to be, if you're not peaceful, happy, and full of love for Krishna, how can you give it to someone else? You can't. You have to be happy, peaceful, and full of love. You know, just like, let's say you're engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna consciousness, and every day your peace, happiness, and love increases. Because every day you get new inspiration by serving, learning something new, how to offer to Krishna. Just like you can learn how to make garlands, you can learn how to make sandesh, you can learn how to cook transcendental burritos, you can learn how to chant nicely, you can learn different tunes and different bhajans, and every day you're learning something new. You can learn how to make deity clothes, you can learn how to manage the treasury so that not one penny is wasted. You can learn so many things you can learn, right? You can learn how to take care of cows, you can learn how to grow vegetables, you can learn how to grow fruit trees, all to please Krishna. So it's unlimited. So wouldn't it be nice to do that 24 hours a day rather than learn how to make the CEO richer? Learn how to be in more anxiety, being pushed all the time for deliverables. Deliverables for who? It should be deliverables for Krishna, not deliverables for some guy who's having illicit sex and drinking liquor and exploiting others. Think about it.
Well, I was trying to explain this philosophy to a young devotee, and how to, just what you said, to be always engaged in different devotional, transcendental activities. So he said, and then one after another, attending Mangala Aarti, he said, but then what about if I get bored?
What?
He asked question.
Yeah, what if I get bored?
Yeah.
Well, ask him, you have never been bored doing what you're doing? Mm-hmm. See, obviously he's an expert in being bored. You understand? That's why I say, well, everything I'm doing now, at some point I get bored. So I don't think Krishna consciousness is any different. So what do I do when I get bored with Krishna consciousness? You see? So he's an expert at boredness. That's why he's asking that question. Okay. So what's your answer to that?
What I said? Yeah, I did tell him the truth. Say like, well, it's true in the beginning you might not appreciate, or you might not experience these, the nature of these activities. They're always full of happiness, ever increasing happiness. That's because you have like a jaundice affected person, you cannot appreciate the sweetness. So therefore you have to go on taking it, because the doctor will tell you, keep on taking sweetness, sugar. He prescribes for you to take some kind of medicine which is sweet, and then you have to believe in the doctor and then keep on taking it. And then one day you get better.
You have to explain that example a little bit more. The example is, the person has jaundice. Everything he eats doesn't taste good, even if it's something sweet. Why is that? Because of jaundice. His liver is diseased and it's putting out this yellow type of poison into the whole body. And therefore, because of that poison that's going through his whole body, see, the liver purifies the blood, but when it doesn't function properly, it doesn't purify anymore. So you get this jaundice because the liver has become overwhelmed with toxins. So instead of purifying blood, it's contaminating the blood. However, when you go through the healing process of jaundice, progressively you begin to taste sweetness again. Although before, when you were jaundiced, you were eating something sweet and it tasted bad. But the thing itself is not bad. It's sweet. But because he's sick and his liver is not working properly, he's tasting it, the sweet thing, to be bitter. But as he gets healed, all of a sudden the sweetness comes again, and then the degrees of sweetness increase the more he becomes healthy. So Krishna consciousness is a process of purifying, not the liver, but the consciousness, which is contaminated. Just like the liver gets contaminated, right? So everything gets purified by Krishna consciousness, including the liver. But if you just take a liver medicine, only the liver gets purified. If you take Krishna consciousness, the consciousness gets purified and the body, both. So you have to explain it like this, where he sees that this is the real solution to all my problems. Not only my liver problem, not only my boredness problem, but all problems will be solved by Krishna consciousness. Okay, that's why Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is a solution for all problems. But you have to be able to explain it. Okay, so we'll stop right there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for that question. Good question.